Welcome to Tent Talk, the podcast with Nancy McCready, where we talk about life under the big tent of God's presence and the provoking process of discipleship. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tent Talk. This is Nancy McCready. In this episode, I kind of preview what's coming in the next episodes. I say by asking this question, who is this woman? I am saying that maybe it's time to take a different look at the Proverbs 31 woman and see her as the bride of Jesus. This woman can give him his place in the city gates, in places of authority and influence that he seeks in culture right now in this hour of history. We're also going to be looking in the next few episodes at how law versus grace affects the way that this woman, the church, will live. So take a listen today. I pray it encourages you to go deeper with him and possibly to connect more with me. Who is this woman? So I'm talking about the Proverbs 31 woman spoken of in Scripture. Don't turn me off, be you man or woman. Listen to me carefully. I'm talking about the wife of the living God, the bride. This is where men have to get used to being a bride, being a wife, and this is where women oftentimes have to get used to being sons. So this is what we've got to recognize, is that all this terminology, these semantics of the bride and of sons and all, is God is attempting to express to us who we are to him and the intensity of the intimacy that he is after. This is not some intimacy of low lights and soft music where there's all kind of funky stuff going on in the dusky light. This is where we live in open face, bright light, fellowshipping with him, where he can address us as sons. He can address us as his wife in the earth, if you will, the bride of Christ. So we've got to let it be what it's really meant to be. So I'm speaking of this Proverbs 31 woman today as who I believe she is in the height of the intentions of the Scripture. If you relegate it to just a woman who stays home, bakes bread, is subservient, obviously I think you're going to miss it. I am of the belief in the new covenant, there is a mutual submission between men and women. Oh, how hell truly fears this. But more than our human relationships, the number one activity in the winepress of God is where he's putting love in right order between the individual and him. And then there is a corporate, collective expression of that within the church. But we've got to know this authority that we carry and this function that we carry in our oneness with him. So I know that in the days ahead, I'm going to do some episodes on who is this woman. And I'm going to also weave into it some thoughts on law versus grace. Because the Scripture says that in our old state, our old spiritual condition, we were married to Mr. Law. And it says that in the Scripture, though, that now, as the new man, as the new person, born through the finished work of the cross and the power of the resurrection, is that we are now married to another. And in English, this word another in the Scripture is capitalized because it means now we are married to Jesus. And in Proverbs 31, it says in verse 23, her husband is known in the city's gates. I believe if this woman, the church, were to live as who she really is to him, he would be sitting in the places of authority, in the gates of our homes, our cities, our states, our nations. And if ever we need to see that, it is now. I love that the very end of Proverbs 31, verse 31 says, give her, this wife, this woman, the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates of the city.
For more information on Nancy, please visit nancymccready.com or follow her on social media at NBMcCready.
If we could see this woman, the church, living in such a way, in such maturing oneness, that it gives her husband, Jesus, true active authority in the gates, at the mountaintops, the influencing places of our culture, that Jesus would be able to express himself through us, then also he then in turn lets the works that we're involved in such deep grace with him, would praise us in the gates of the city. Do you see this mutual life together? Of course he is preeminent in all things. He's the source of all. But he longs for a oneness where there is a mutual shared life together. And so we're not going to make much of ourselves as the church and we just want to be a friend to our city. No, first, do we want to give Jesus preeminence in the city gates, in the places of authority? Do we want to allow that? Then we need to look at the Proverbs 31 woman as the church. I'm just suggesting to you, look at her as the church. And if you read Proverbs 31 in the Amplified Classic, oh, wow, what a church. What a wife. What a woman. What a bride. Can we get out of gender, making everything about gender, and let's first let it be about spirit, who we are in spirit, and then I believe the gender issue would begin to clear itself up ever so quickly. So, this episode today is to get you ready for what's coming in the next few episodes, because I'm going to weave together who is this woman in Proverbs 31 and what are the differences between law versus grace. Oh, how we need this right now, because we need to be activated in the grace of God. We need to be activated as who we are, men and women, moving together, shoulder to shoulder, in mutual submission, pleasing the Father and crushing the enemy under our feet. Not in some hyped up, glorified just preaching of it, but the true slow fire discipleship that's going to actually cause it to take effect inside of us. And then there'll be a showing of it within the church. It can happen, my friends. It's happened before. It certainly is happening now and will continue to happen as we awaken to what it is that the Father has always wanted. I'm after an awakening that is beyond some glorified church service. An awakening where the spell that is spoken of in Galatians 3 begins to break off of us, and we step into the grace, supercharged grace of the Father to actually live and work. Yes, work as who we are. There were works that were written down for you before the foundations of the world. And you are being prepared for those works right now. This woman in Proverbs 31 is a working woman of authority. And her works give her husband a seating in the city gates. And then he, in turn, praises her in those city gates. Can we live in this? I pray that we can. So, thank you for listening to this today as we get ready for the next episodes here on Tent Talk. I'm so glad that you were with me. Please go to nancymccready.com. Check everything out there. Go to my online school and community, theproducersway.com, and let's get involved in those places together. All right? I love you all. Talk to you soon.
If you'd like information on how to book Nancy McCready for an event or speaking engagement, visit nancymccready.com.